Hello, welcome to our transfer deadline day live video here at We Are Sunderland. Myself, Dom Shaw, and Scott Wilson. The initial plan was to do this a bit earlier today, but as is so often the case on transfer deadline day, one thing leads to another, and before you know it, you've lost track of a couple of hours. It looked like we were in for a really quiet deadline day, Scott, the end of last week. Then it turned into a unexpectedly dramatic weekend. And now we might well be in for a really quiet final few hours to deadline again, which we'll get to. Obviously, we'll talk Latrell Catriona after yesterday's twists and turns. We'll talk about the ins and the outs in the goalkeeper department, and we'll talk about a few other bits and bobs that are doing the rounds today. A couple of fringe players as well that might move on. Adil Sheesh being one of those, who's obviously spent the first half of the season in Scotland with Aberdeen. Do subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. By the way, if you have, you'll have had the alert through that we've gone live here. But if you just joined us for the first time, we do videos and podcasts every week. So jump aboard, subscribe, and if you're listening on your podcast platform later, then obviously rate and review as well. There is also the small matter of a game of football taking place at the Stadium of Light tonight, which we'll get to right at the end. Let's start, Scott, with Catriona, I think, because it came out of nowhere, really, on Sunday morning, looked set to be off, and by the end of the day, it was clear that he was going nowhere. Just talk us through what happened yesterday with him.
Yeah, it was an interesting one, kind of keeping on top of it and following it, to be perfectly honest. I mean, it did at very first kind of come from nowhere. There hadn't been a lot of suggestions about it, but I think the reason for that was that it was only really at the back end of last week when Liverpool's kind of defensive injury problems became so chronic that I think Arne Slot persuaded the board that they needed to do something about it. So obviously Conor Bradley and Frimpong then got injured, didn't he? Gomez is out. So it was Szoboszlai at right back for Liverpool at the weekend. So they needed a player. Slot had worked with Catriona at Feyenoord and was pushing him very strongly from a Liverpool end. So the contacts then made with Sunderland. It's also made with Leipzig. There's an initial round of discussions. And I think initially Sunderland's view was broadly similar to their view when the whole Mark Gui thing kicked off at the start of the season, which was, look, if there's a player here who we've got on loan who, you know, is by no means agitating to be out, but the feeling is that he would want the move if we could make it happen, then I think it's probably duty bound on us to look at what are the possibilities here. Who could we bring in? Is it a deal that's going to work? Now, the problem with this one was that obviously there was an awful lot of moving parts because Catriona's on loan from Leipzig at Sunderland for the season. There's no automatic break clause, so Sunderland did well to avoid that going in because they had there been, Leipzig might well have triggered that and sold him to Liverpool, and Sunderland couldn't have done anything about it. Sunderland were not in that situation. They've already paid a loan fee to have him here. They've got a clause enabling them to complete a permanent in the summer for around about 23 million euros, somewhere in that ballpark, we'll have to understand. So not only are Liverpool negotiating with Leipzig in terms of a transfer fee because he's a Leipzig player, they're also negotiating with Sunderland in terms of what compensation does Sunderland get for the loan being cut short? How does the whole thing work? It was only ever going to work if the financial compensation was right and if Sunderland were able to secure a replacement. And obviously that's a difficult thing with Catriona because he's filling so many different roles.
I was just about to say, what do you replace?
Replacement, yeah. My understanding is that the main thing Sunderland were wanting was defensive midfield cover. Obviously, Dan Neil's already left. We know there's going to be no Granit Xhaka tonight. So the one area they didn't want to leave themselves short in for the rest of the season was defensive midfield. By kind of tea time-ish yesterday, it had become apparent that the money situation hadn't really gone anywhere. There was nothing being firmed up on that front. And Sunderland's moves to try and source a replacement were not really paying off. So at that stage, Sunderland, the Sunderland hierarchy have got in touch with Liverpool and saying, look, this isn't going to happen. And they've kind of hastily arranged talks with Catriona where they've basically laid out their reasons for why it's not happening and their kind of what they want from him and what they expect from him in the second half of the season, and presumably longer term than that as well. And all that we're hearing is that Catriona is very much on board with that. You know, he's not throwing his toys out the pram in any way, shape or form. I expect he'll be in the squad tonight. And so it's very much business as usual now. You know, Sunderland won't be going back on that. They won't be changing their mind on that today. I'm told Liverpool and Leipzig can really do what they want.
Liverpool are signing someone else now, aren't they?
They're signing the French centre half, aren't they? From Rennes, is it? I think it's Rennes. Yeah. So that's basically where we're at with it. I think Sunderland have come out of it pretty well, because I think it would have been really difficult in the last day of the window to get any kind of a realistic replacement for what Hertraude will give them in the remainder of the season. He's been really valuable up to now. No Xhaka at the minute. We know Dan Neil's left. There's still not really a natural cover for Trey Hume / Mukiele in terms of there. Hertraude allows Lebris to be really flexible, playing 4 at the back, playing 5 at the back. I think it would have been really hard for Sunderland to replace him.
It only came out yesterday, obviously, but has this been bubbling away in the background? We're not sure. Is it coincidental that he has been an unused substitute in the last 2 games? It felt like West Ham last week, for example, that it was strange that he wasn't used. Is that a complete coincidence?
Yeah, I know what you mean, because as soon as Xhaka went out, I was thinking, certainly away from home, well, Hertraude will go in there. Like you say, he didn't at West Ham. My understanding on that is no, because it's only been when Liverpool's defensive injury... it's really the Frimpong injury for Liverpool that's forced their hand on this. Well, that only happened in the middle of last week, didn't it? So no would be my thoughts on that. But I do know what you mean. It's very easy to kind of think, well, was there something going on there? Because I was surprised he didn't play at West Ham. I think he should have done, shouldn't he, in hindsight?
Yeah, I think he should have done. I think you can easily make the case that he should be in the starting 11 tonight.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a way around it, because he might well, if he wants to keep Lefay in the middle, Diarra will start tonight, won't he?
Diarra, Siddiqui.
So and then if he wants to keep Lefay in the middle, he can easily go Diarra, Siddiqui, Lefay. But if he feels that it was only last week, he was saying that Lebris was saying they clearly need more depth and experience out wide. If he feels the need to move Lefay, then Hertraude, Diarra,
because
but he's staying. He's staying. That's the main. That's the main thing, isn't it? Goalkeeper movement. There was goalkeeper movement yesterday. So Melker Elborg signed from Malmo. We always knew, didn't we? Lebris pretty much made it clear, if Sunderland can sign a goalkeeper, Anthony Patterson will be allowed to move. We know Millwall wanted him, Alex Neil, a link up there to Sunderland, old Sunderland Boys Club there, isn't it? With Tommy Watson going there as well. We'll get to Watson before the end. Patterson's gone to Millwall. Elborg comes in at Sunderland. The feeling wasn't it, that Sunderland wanted an experienced second choice goalkeeper, but a young player. I know that's like a young player who's been playing, who is deemed to have, similar to Roofs, really, the very best years ahead of him, but a similar profile to Roofs as well. And clearly, this signing ticks all the boxes there. Patterson needs to play, doesn't he? Patterson needs to go out and play and kick on with his career again, because he's never going to get the gloves back at Sunderland while Roof's there, is it? So it feels like a couple of deals that suit all parties.
It does, yeah. And to be fair, we talk about difficult deals to do. Signing a number 2 goalkeeper in a lot of different ways is often the hardest one to do, especially when, like, as you say, what Sunderland were pretty clear and what we were being briefed was, what we don't want to do is bring in a 35-year-old who, could be a number 2 keeper, will probably happily sit on the bench, but has a bit of experience. They didn't want to go down that route. If they were going to sign a goalkeeper, it was going to be a player that fits their model, that they can develop, that they think there's value in. The problem with that, of course, as you said, is if Robin Roos gets injured tonight against Burnley, then that player potentially starts the rest of the season. So it needs to be a player that's of that level, but who's at a point in his career where he's not going to, again, kick up a fuss about being, initially at least, the number 2. Well, Elborg's, been playing for Malmo. He broke into their team last season. He doesn't have a lot of experience, but he's played Champions League qualifiers. He played in all their Europa League group games, played against Forest, Panathinaikos, I think it was, they played against, Red Star Belgrade, played in those games. He's a Sweden under-19 international. He's 22 now. There's clearly a player there who's reached a certain level, but who will not be coming demanding to be replacing Robin Roos next week. You know what I mean? So I think he ticks all the boxes. I think Sunderland have really done really well with that deal. That then, as you rightly say, means Patterson goes, and a lot of the same things we said about Dan Neil apply to Anthony Patterson, don't they? You know what I mean? You cannot forget or underestimate the role that he played in getting Sunderland out of League One initially, then out of the Championship. I mean, we've said it before, that the save that he makes at Wembley in the playoff final is a brilliant save. It's a massive save for, in the context of that game and in the context of Sunderland's season and everything that's happened since. Like Neil, it's unfortunate that he's not had the chance to try and prove himself in the Premier League. But in the same way that we said Dan Neil can't really complain given how well Jacques has played, how well Sadiq, well, clearly exactly the same applies to Patterson and Roos. Once Roos has got in there for that opening game, then he's done absolutely nothing to say this is, there's a mistake here, this needs to change. Circumstances have just gone against Anthony Patterson, and he's found himself completely stuck on the bench.
Good move for him, Millwall, isn't it? I mean, the 5th in the Championship, they're going well. He's joining a manager who clearly knows him really well, Alex Neil. They've made a couple of good eye-catching signings this month. Tommy Watson hasn't really played much for Brighton in the first half of the season. Will he be regretting that summer move?
I think he might. Yeah, I think he might. I mean, listen, it's a long-term move. There's always going to be ups and downs on the career trajectory of a player like that. He might very, very well still go on to be an absolutely top Premier League player with Brighton. But I think it's safe to say it hasn't gone to plan so far, has it? He hasn't been able to break really into that Brighton team. I think he's made 10 senior appearances, but they've been in a variety of different competitions. It feels like he needs to make a success of this loan and kick on, doesn't it? Would he have played more if he'd stayed at Sunderland? Probably, but I don't think he would be starting still. I don't think Lebris will be starting him ahead of Traore, Lafay, Talby when he played at the start of the season. No, exactly. He was kind of on a par with Mundle. Well, Mundle's not really been able to hold down a place this year, has he? So I think he probably would have played a little bit more, but I still don't think he would have been a regular. I think I think we're kind of kidding ourselves on if we think, well, if Tommy Watson had stayed, he'd be tearing it up in the Premier League for Sunderland. I don't think he would have had that level of involvement.
Thanks to Drifter for this comment, and do get involved in the comments below if there's anything you want us to discuss. Obviously, he said, is there any news on Wilson Isidore moving this transfer window? Well, no, there's no news since the end of last week. Besiktas were last linked, weren't they? Everton and Forest were linked before then. And Lebris was asked about it. He was asked about it again in his press conference on Friday, but that was briefly kind of paired with a question on Eliza Mienda, because Mienda had been linked with a move to Paris FC, hadn't he? And Lebris reiterated really what he'd said the week before when he said, I think we've got the perfect setup now with 3 strikers, or 2 strikers and 1 versatile striker in Mienda, who is a centre forward but can also obviously play outright. What he basically said, he did not categorically rule out a move for Isidore, but what he said was he's an important player, and suggested if he was to go, and it would take a big bid, obviously, he'd have to be replaced. Well, signing a striker this late in a January window is extremely difficult. There's not going to be any major first-team exits like that now, is there, at this stage of a window?
It just feels too late in the day, doesn't it? I mean, there's the Isidore stuff on a similar kind of level. There's Monaco being linked with a Dingra that keeps kind of flying around, look like they're, I mean, the Isidore one, I think, definitely will not happen, because, as you rightly say, he would absolutely have to be replaced. And while Sunderland did Brobby very late on deadline day in the summer,
they've done the groundwork on that.
They've done all the groundwork on that. Yeah. Now, unless and I know Sunderland have been brilliant at keeping things quiet, kind of recently. Unless everything is really, really quiet, then. We're not aware of anything that's got remotely near enough for that to be a kind of possibility. So I would be very, very surprised on the Isidore front. I'd be surprised with the Dingra as well, just because Sunderland are kind of a wide attacker short anyway. We've been saying all the way through. The only thing with a Dingra is hasn't really worked, has it? Hasn't really worked. I mean, Monaco, presumably that would be a move he would be interested in if there is genuinely something in it. I've got to admit, I'm being absolutely honest here, it's not one that I've had a proper steer on yet. So in terms of, how serious that interest is, I would be really surprised this late in the window if Sunderland let a wide attacker go, because, like I say, it's an area of the pitch where we've been saying all along, will they bring another one in? Well, it doesn't look like they're going to bring another one in. So I still think it will be a real surprise.
It was interesting last week. Obviously, they've signed Jocelyn Tarby, who's a winger, but Labrise was really honest about the Phil from the Sunderland Echo asked him in the press conference last week. Do you feel like you're a bit short of depth and experience, really, in the wide areas? And he said, yeah, that's obvious. Facts are facts. Traore has been a key player, hasn't he? Established himself as a key player. He's obviously injured. Lafay's had to play on the left, which probably isn't ideal. Mundell's come back and has been playing, but is still finding his feet in the Premier League, which is understandable. Adingra's the same. Talby's obviously back now. Wouldn't surprise me to see Talby going to start in 11 tonight. We've said it a few times. It definitely feels like the one short in that area, doesn't it? And the fact of being playing Trey Hume there in recent weeks, I think says it all. When you said you think the move to Monaco would appeal to him, I suppose you mean the lure of Champions League football rather than the opportunity to live in
Swan around Monte Carlo. To be fair, both wouldn't be bad, would they? Let's be brutally honest. I'm not sure if he's a casino man or a Formula One man. That would be why you'd head to Monaco, wouldn't it? No, yeah.
Fringe players then. Adil Al-Shish, very much a forgotten man, really.
Very much a forgotten man, really. Yeah.
First half of the season on loan in Scotland with Aberdeen.
Done all right with Aberdeen, to be fair to him. Been playing pretty regularly. Scored, I think it was 3 goals. Done all right. Schalke is a great move for him. Gelsenkirchen in that stadium that was kind of hosted Euros games and stuff. I mean, they're a massively supported team, top of what's effectively the German Championship, Bundesliga 2. Gunning for promotion. Big crowds, big historic club. I think it's a great chance for him to experience something different and maybe kick his career on. I mean, quite clearly, no prospects whatsoever at Sunderland. Did all right at Portsmouth on loan last season, didn't he? But it feels like the Championship, that's his level if he's going to do anything in England. So, why not go to Schalke and maybe get promoted and have a shot at playing in the Bundesliga next season?
And on the subject of fringe players, here's another one. Leo Hjelde, rumored to be off to Sheffield United on loan. Indeed, he is. That feels like a move that suits all parties well. I think he's been on the bench 4 times this season. Hjelde hasn't kicked the ball. Centre half, he's clearly well down the pecking order. Left back, he is as well. When you consider Reinildo, Sirkin, Hume, Catriona, who can obviously play absolutely anywhere, including in goal, I would think. So that one would make sense for all parties, I think. It
feels like one that's going to happen. I think it's pretty well down the road, yeah.
If we get to the end of the window then and nothing else happens other than those fringe things we've discussed there, Al-Shish, Hjelde, if Adingra stays, has this been a successful window for Sunderland?
I mean, what I would say about it is I don't think it's a disaster that there hasn't been a headline sign, and obviously Tarby came in, didn't he? Early on in the window. It always felt like this was a window that if something appealing came up, go and do it. Clearly, Sunderland's main transfer activity will take place in the summer. We understand that plans are very much in place for that. They know what they want to do. I don't for 1 minute think it'll be as big an overhaul as we saw this summer, but everything I'm hearing is that there is desire, funds, PSR headroom, whatever, to do something meaningful in the summer, to make pretty big signings. Well, what you don't want to do is do something for the sake of it this month that actually limits what you can then go on and do in the summer. We know in the whole PSR world, that's the way everything works. So, in an ideal world, would Sunderland have brought in probably a wide attacker who could also play up front, who was absolutely ready to go in and make an impact in the first team? Well, yeah, the squad would have benefited from that. I have absolutely no doubt. I just don't think that player's been there. I don't think that player's been out there, even for Sunderland, who have, plucked rabbits from hats left, right and centre since they've got promoted. I don't think they feel that there's been that. So in that scenario, what you then don't want to do is just panic and do something for the sake of it. And I think the biggest success of the last 2 days of the window is going to be holding on to Catriona, because, like I say, I think he would have been pretty much impossible to replace at this stage of the month.
Do you know if Jan Poveda still exists? He does. He does still exist.
I think so.
Can't really offer any more than that.
Barnes, the BBC asks about him once in a blue moon, bless him, just to make sure we still know he's there.
Yeah, so yeah, he is still there. The problem is with someone like Jan Poveda, the wage he will be on makes it so difficult to offload a player like that, doesn't it? Because he's not going to get what he's on at Sunderland.
Well, and especially
the club that are going to be interested in him, if there is any interest in him.
Yeah, and especially maybe slightly less so with Poveda, but as we've said, that the international loans is maxed out in terms of Sunderland now. You know, they cannot loan anyone else abroad. Well, you know, that immediately limits your market for that type of player, or the fringe players who are still there, who they still want to get rid of. And then, like, as you quite rightly say, the wages do then become an issue.
Yeah, the international loan. I mean, Ahmed Abdullahi, it feels like a loan move. Yeah. Obviously would have been perfect for him. There was one clause in the summer that fell through, wasn't it? But obviously that's not going to happen. An international loan anyway, unless there's a domestic loan on the cards. Harry Wilson would have been perfect for us in this window. Yeah, there's plenty of Premier League clubs that I think could say that. He's been flying for Fulham, hasn't he? Just quickly before we get to the game tonight, Josh Kelly.
Oh yeah!
What a win at the weekend! Sunderland's first goal champion. He's there tonight. He's going to be in the boardroom as a special guest. And the word was after the win on Saturday night. I'm a big boxing fan, but I'm not going to try and pronounce the name of the fella he beat. Is that Sunderland want to stage a world title defence? That'd be class, wouldn't it? There's some big names, some big fights that could be made there as well. Massive appeal. That'd be class.
Oh, I mean, a world title fight with a hometown fighter topping the bill outdoors at the Stadium of Light would be just sensational, wouldn't it? It would be absolutely brilliant. I mean, you know, we've never really had anything like that, have we? You know, I mean, the stadium's obviously been, you know, all the concerts, Lionesses, England, rugby, obviously, World Cup, all of that, yeah, brilliant. But, you know, any big boxing night is another kind of tick in the box for something a bit different. But like you say, when you've got a hometown lad defending a world title, topping the bill, that would be immense. You know, if it could happen this summer, it'd be brilliant.
Yeah, I think the thing is, you said there, we've never had it, and we haven't across the region really. I've often felt like it's a surprise.
No, not that big. No, not that big. I mean, I covered Stuart Hall a fair bit, the Darlow lad, when he won the world title, but that was at Leeds Arena. Funny enough, he then defended it in Monaco, where I went to watch him.
Yeah, well, I think the thing with Kelly is, it's not just that he's a world champion, but the profile there, like the commercial appeal of Josh Kelly, for all the obvious reasons, is clearly huge, and there's some massive fights to be made at the weight as well. So. That'd be just before we get the game tonight, what I meant to mention, Tyreek George was linked at the weekend. He looks set for Everton. Does the fact that there was a link there, well, it tells us, and we knew this anyway, didn't we, that someone was still looking and still trying. It offers an indication at least as to what type of player they're looking at.
Yeah,
the feeling, and despite the reports, the feeling was always that he was going to Everton. Wasn't it? A move
I mean, you know, it was bubbling along back end of last week, start of the weekend, and the guidance was very much, there's an interest. You know, there's been at least some level of discussions, but doesn't look like it's going to happen. And then it became pretty obvious that the reason it wasn't going to happen was because Everton were much further down the line with it, and he's heading there. So, but you're right. I mean, it shows wide attacker, which we kind of knew, but very much. The profile is bang on, young. We can develop them. You know, it's the model, if you like. And I know, God, can you remember all the conversations around that there's been through the years? But you know, it's for all that the spending's changed, and yes, you know, there is a willingness to be flexible when you need to. Generally, that is the type of player Sunderland want to be signing.
The handsome dancer could have made our job a hell of a lot easier for us if we'd have just done this this morning, then we could have knocked off for the day. There's a game of football tonight, though. We couldn't knock off.
There is
light tonight for a game of football. Always weird when there's a game on a deadline, but the deadline being 7 o'clock is easier. I've been to a couple where the deadline's 11 o'clock, where it's a nightmare really, where you're juggling that in the background. Big game for Sunderland, isn't it? After last week's no-show at West Ham, it feels like not must win. Clearly, we're not in must win territory. You only have to look at the table. It feels like Sunderland could really do with a win.
It does, in the same way that the win over Palace kind of. Sunderland have not been on an awful run. It's not been horrendous. They had some really tough games when their AFCON players were away. They got some really creditable draws. The only issue is they haven't really been winning. They've been dropping steadily down that league table. We always need to keep dropping in here. Unless the wheels absolutely come off, which they're not going to, then whatever happens from now on in, it's been a remarkable success story. It's been a brilliant season. But what you don't want is for it really just to ebb away to kind of nothing, and Sunderland get on a pretty lengthy, poor run. Now, as I say, the Palace win stopped that to a large extent, but then not so much the loss at West Ham, but really the manner of that first half performance. I think we'd all agree Sunderland's worst 45 minutes of the season. You want a response to that. You're at home to maybe the worst team in the league now that Wolves are showing that little bit of signs. Certainly one of the teams who you look like are going to get relegated. A team that, funnily enough, are one of the few other times Sunderland haven't really turned up this season. That Burnley away game, and a game that if you do slip up tonight, then I think you're looking at it thinking, well, this isn't just a wobble now. This is Sunderland bang out of form. Whereas if you win it tonight, keeps the unbeaten home run going, which is such a proud thing. I mean, that would be absolutely fantastic. Means back-to-back home wins after the Palace game. And it just, again, shifts the narrative away from Sunderland are having a bit of a wobble. They were dreadful for 45 minutes at West Ham. What's gone wrong? A win tonight draws a line once again under that. And, I think that home record is something they will really, really be wanting to hold on to between now and the end of the season.
A win tonight lifts them back to 8th in the table, joint with Brentford, which says everything, doesn't it? It's still very congested between 7th and 12th, 13th. But yeah, the wheels, like you say, the wheels aren't coming off. But what you don't want is to just for the season to completely peter out. And tonight I agree with you about that missed opportunity in the Burnley game. It feels like, had that been any other time of the season, if that had been November rather than the second weekend of the season, Sunderland would have gone to Burnley and you'd have backed them to win, wouldn't you? Whereas still finding the feet. It was Burnley's first home game, but coming away from there, it felt like a missed opportunity. But that West Ham performance, like you say, was undoubtedly the worst of the season so far. It was interesting. We spoke to Labreese on Friday, and he was asked, like, a week or so on now, how do you reflect on that performance at West Ham? And he said it's the intensity that he felt let them down, and he's sure that they're going to put that right. Just while we're talking, actually, now Keith Downey, Sky Sports, is reporting Sunderland are in advanced talks with AS Monaco over a loan deal for Simone Adingra.
Okay, there we go. Then. Yeah.
Is expected to agree a deal with Monaco in the summer with an option to make the deal permanent. Sunderland are set to net a 7-figure loan fee from the deal. He's signed the sum of £21 million, scored just one goal for Sunderland. So there you go. That looks like it very much is on the cards.
Which is, I mean, it is interesting if he's not going to be replaced at this late stage, because they clearly made their mind up on him. But that one does feel like it's an area of the pitch where, I mean, listen, there are options, aren't there? Trey Humes playing as a right midfielder / right winger now. So there's immediately another option to add to Talby, Mundell on the other flank. Lafayette's been playing off the left. So it's not like Sunderland don't have wide attacking players.
No, but they're short.
It felt like an area of the squad you wouldn't really want to be taking someone else out of.
It suggests, doesn't it, that either Adingra's not happy or that what they've seen in the first half of the season, they just have no confidence that he's going to be able.
I think it's largely the latter. I think it's the fact that they've made their mind up on him. You know what I mean? And I guess,
and it might be that now's the best opportunity.
Yeah, and then you get the opportunity to effectively, get your money back, limit your losses, however it ends up being. Then maybe you do just take that. But yeah, it's an interesting one.
Right, then we'll stay with us, not on here, because we can't trundle away on here all afternoon, but keep your eye on the Northern Echo and We Are Sunderland sites, because we'll get a steer now try and get a steer on how close that is and whether Sunderland are likely to replace Adingra between now and the deadline. But thanks for joining us on here. Enjoy the game if you're there tonight. We won't jump back on here again later today just because Scott's got to obviously get up the A19, but we'll be back later this week to do our regular pod and vid, looking ahead to the weekend trip to Arsenal. I'm there at the weekend, looking forward to that. I suspect Labrise will be doing his press conference Thursday as well, so we'll obviously have full analysis from and reaction from that as well. But yeah, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy the game tonight. Take care.